The village of Nkara lay peacefully beneath the vast expanse of the savanna sky. Here the golden hues of dawn stretched endlessly, painting the horizon with the promise of another day, steeped in tradition and hard work. The heart of the village pulsed with life. Women balanced baskets of grain atop their heads, men prepared tools for the fields, and children darted between huts, their laughter ringing like the sound of wind chimes. Yet, looming beyond this idyllic scene was the Nyama forest, a dark and mysterious expanse that no villager dared enter. Its edge whispered ominous secrets, the rustle of leaves like a warning from unseen forces. Nyama sees everything, the elder's voice echoed one evening around the communal fire. The flames danced against her weathered face, casting shadows that seemed alive. The spirits who guard the forest remember all. They know the greedy, the arrogant, and those who forget the ways of their ancestors. The children huddled closer, their wide eyes reflecting both curiosity and fear. One boy hesitantly raised his hand. What happens if someone enters? The elder leaned forward, her voice a mix of sorrow and warning. Some say the forest swallows them whole. Others claim the spirits show them visions so terrifying they lose their minds. Those who survive, they carry a curse that follows them for generations. Despite the elder's words, not all villagers shared her reverence for the forest. Adisa, a young man with a sharp mind and a braver heart, stood apart from the others. His tall frame and confident stride gave him an air of authority among his peers. Yet his constant questioning of tradition made him a source of unease for the elders. One morning, as the villagers gathered by the river, Adisa broke the silence. "Why do we let ourselves be ruled by stories?" he asked, his voice firm. "The forest is just trees and shadows. We should not live in fear of something we don't even understand." Zola, his elder sister, turned to him with a look of dismay. She was as calm as he was fiery, her every movement deliberate, as though she carried the wisdom of generations. "Adisa," she said softly, "some stories are not just tales, they are warnings, born from the mistakes of those who came before us." Adisa scoffed, shaking his head. "Warnings to keep us from growing. Do you not see, Zola? The elders use these tales to keep us trapped, to make us live small lives." He gestured toward the distant forest. "I am not afraid. One day I will step into Nyama and prove to everyone there is nothing to fear." Not far from where they stood, the imposing figure of Chief Ning watched the exchange. The elder chief, with his flowing robes and staff adorned with intricate carvings, was both revered and feared. His voice, though soft, carried the weight of generations. "Adisa," Chief Ning said, stepping forward. "Your courage is admirable, but courage without wisdom is a fire that burns everything in its path." His eyes seemed to pierce through Adisa's defiance. "The forest is not what you think it is. It remembers. It judges. If you challenge it, you will bear the consequences." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Adisa sat with his closest friends, Kobe and Dumi, outside his family's hut. The stars twinkled above them, but the tension in the air was palpable. Kobe, ever the optimist, chuckled. "You and your big ideas, Adisa. First, you wanted to climb the tallest tree in the savannah. Now, you want to walk into the cursed forest." Adisa grinned. "Why not? Someone has to challenge these old fears. What if there is treasure hidden in Nyama, waiting for someone bold enough to find it?" Dumi, who had been quiet, leaned forward. His eyes, always sharp and calculating, glinted in the firelight. "Treasure, you say?" His tone was laced with intrigue. "If you're going, I'll join you. The spirits won't scare me." Kobe shook his head, laughing nervously. "You're both mad. The elders say the forest is alive, and after hearing that story tonight, I think I'll stay here with the sane ones." Adisa placed a hand on Kobe's shoulder. "You'll see, Kobe. When I return with proof, everyone will realize the stories are just that, stories." The village, though bustling with life, was woven together by the threads of tradition and belief. For many, the tales of Nyama Forest were as real as the ground beneath their feet. Yet, as the firelight flickered and the night deepened, Adisa's heart burned with a defiance that could not be quenched. Unbeknownst to him, his challenge to the forest would awaken forces far beyond his understanding, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever change the village of Nara. The village of Nakara braced itself as a violent storm raged through the night. The winds howled like restless spirits, and the rain poured with an intensity that seemed to wash away time itself. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Fallen branches and uprooted trees littered the ground, and at the edge of the forbidden Nyama forest, something shimmered faintly beneath the morning sun. Adisa, walking along the forest's boundary, noticed the glint among the wet grass. He knelt and unearthed a golden anklet, its intricate designs unlike anything he had ever seen. Symbols, ancient and indecipherable, ran along its surface, radiating an aura of mystery. Zola has to see this, he murmured, though his heart raced with a mixture of awe and ambition. What could this mean? Later that day, Adisa sat in his family's hut, the anklet resting on the table between him and Zola. She frowned as she studied it, her fingers tracing the strange symbols. "This is not a trinket," she said, her voice heavy with concern. "It's a warning. The forest has secrets, Adisa, secrets we are not meant to uncover." Adisa leaned back, a smirk on his face. "You see danger in everything, Zola? What if this is a sign? What if there's more? Treasure buried in Nyama, waiting for someone brave enough to find it." Zola's tone sharpened. "The spirits do not leave treasures for the greedy. They leave traps for the reckless." Adisa dismissed her warning with a wave of his hand. "I'm not greedy, I'm curious. And you'll see, Zola. I'll prove to the village that there's nothing to fear." Word of the anklet reached Chief Neem, who summoned Adisa to his hut. The elder sat cross-legged by the hearth, his staff resting against his knee. The glow of the fire accentuated the deep lines of his face, each one a testament to years of wisdom. "You found something near the forest," Nenkem said, his voice calm yet commanding. Adisa nodded, holding up the anklet. "I did, Chief. And I believe it's part of something greater." The elder studied him for a moment before speaking. "Adisa, the forest remembers. It judges. Those who enter its boundaries do not return unchanged if they return at all. My father told me of a hunter who ventured too far into Nyama seeking game. He returned. But his mind did not. He spoke of shadows and voices, of faces in the trees. He did not survive the year." Adisa stiffened but kept his gaze steady. "With respect, Chief, these are old stories meant to keep us afraid." "I am not afraid." Nenkem leaned forward, his voice dropping to a grave whisper. "The spirits do not care for bravery, boy. They care for balance. Disrupt it, and you will pay." That evening, Adisa met Kobe and Dumian under the canopy of a large baobab tree. He revealed the anklet to them, his eyes alight with excitement. "This," he said, holding it up, "is proof. Proof that there is treasure hidden in Nyama." Kobe scratched his head, his unease plain. "Adisa, you know what the elders say about the forest. Spirits, curses. I don't want to end up like those poor souls in their stories." Dumi, however, was captivated. His eyes lingered on the golden anklet, and a faint smile crept across his face. "Treasure, you say? What else could be in there? Jewels? More gold?" Adisa nodded eagerly. "Exactly. Reaches beyond anything this village has ever seen, and if we find it, we'll be remembered forever." Kobai hesitated. "But what if the stories are true?" Adisa placed a reassuring hand on his friend's shoulder. "They're just stories, Kobe. The forest can't hurt us if we go prepared, trust me." Demi clapped his hands together. "I'm in. If there's even a chance of finding something valuable, it's worth the risk." Kobe sighed but eventually relented. "Fine, but if I see even one spirit, I'm running back to the village." Adisa grinned, his confidence unwavering. "You won't regret this. Together we'll change everything." As the three friends made their pact, the shadows of the forest seemed to deepen, as though unseen eyes were watching. Their fate was sealed, and the path to Nyama was one they would not tread without consequence. The moon hung low in the night sky, veiled by wisps of cloud that moved like restless spirits. Adisa, Kobe, and Dumi stood at the edge of the Nyama forest, their faces lit only by the pale silver light. Behind them, Zola's voice cracked with emotion. "Adisa, please, don't go," she begged, her hands clutching his arm. "This is not bravery. This is foolishness." Adisa gently pulled away, determination etched across his face. "I must, Zola. The village needs someone to challenge the old fears. I'll be back before dawn." "Adisa," Zola warned, her voice trembling. "If you cross this boundary, you may not return as yourself. The spirits do not forgive easily." Chief Nekem's earlier words rang in Adisa's ears, but he ignored them. "The spirits are tales to keep us in fear," he muttered. "Come on, let's go." As the three men stepped into the forest, Zola fell to her knees, her tears blending with the damp earth. The forest seemed alive with silence, an unnatural stillness that swallowed every sound. No birds chirped. No crickets sang. Even the rustling of leaves was absent. Kobe looked around nervously, clutching his walking stick. "This place feels wrong," he whispered, his voice breaking the oppressive quiet. Dumi smirked, though his own unease was clear. "It's just a forest, Kobe. Don't let the stories scare you." Adisa pressed forward, his stride unwavering. "Stay close. We've come too far to turn back now." But with every step the air grew heavier, the shadows deeper. It was as though the forest itself was aware of their presence, watching, waiting. As they ventured deeper, the trio came upon an ancient tree, its trunk scarred with strange carvings. Symbols twisted around its bark, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "What is this?" Dumi asked, running his hand over the patterns. Kobe stepped back, his face pale. "These are warnings. The elders spoke of trees like this. They're meant to protect the sacred places." Adisa scoffed. "These carvings are nothing more than relics of the past. Let's keep moving." But as they turned away, the carvings seemed to shimmer, their shapes shifting imperceptibly, as though the tree itself was alive. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the forest became. Whispers drifted through the air, soft and indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. "Do you hear that?" Kobe asked, his voice trembling. Dumi stopped and listened, his brow furrowing. "It's just the wind." "No," Kobe insisted. "It's voices. They're speaking." Adisa interrupted, his voice sharp. "Enough. It's in your head. Focus." But the whispers grew louder, rising and falling like a chant. The men exchanged nervous glances, doubt creeping into their resolve. The path they followed began to twist unnaturally, looping back on itself. No matter which direction they took, they seemed to return to the same spot. Panic set in as Adisa tried to steady his breathing. "The forest is playing tricks on us," Dumi muttered, frustration in his voice. "We're going in circles." Adisa clenched his fists. "No, we keep moving. There has to be a way through." Finally, they stumbled upon the ruins of an ancient village. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, as though time itself had stopped. Crumbling huts leaned against overgrown wells, and a massive tree stood in the center, its trunk carved with human-like faces. "These carvings," Kobe began, his voice shaking, "they look alive." Adisa approached the tree, his hand brushing one of the faces. For a moment, he thought he saw its expression change, a flicker of sorrow, a hint of anger. He pulled his hand back quickly, his confidence faltering. "We need to leave," Kobe whispered. "Now." But Adisa was transfixed, his gaze lingering on the strange faces. "Not yet. There's more here." Tensions began to simmer as they pressed on. Dumi's envy bubbled to the surface, his voice tinged with bitterness. "You think you know everything, Adisa," he said, "leading us in circles, acting like you're the only one brave enough." Adisa spun to face him, anger flashing in his eyes. "I didn't force you to come, Dumi. You followed because you wanted what I want." "And what is that?" Dumi challenged. "To be remembered? To be the hero?" Kobe stepped between them, his voice desperate. "Stop it. This isn't the time to argue. We need to get out of here." Their argument was interrupted when Adisa spotted a faint glow coming from beneath a pile of debris. He dug through the rubble, revealing a hidden passage. The chamber beyond glimmered with golden relics, their surfaces catching the faint light. Dumi's eyes widened in greed. "This is it," he breathed. "Treasure." Adisa smiled, his earlier doubts forgotten. "I told you there was more." Kobe, however, took a step back, his face pale. "This isn't right. We shouldn't touch anything." But Dumi ignored him, reaching for one of the relics. "What are you so afraid of, Kobe? The spirits? They haven't stopped us yet." Adisa hesitated but finally followed Dumi's lead, his fingers brushing the cool surface of the gold. The chamber shuddered violently, and an anguished wail echoed through the forest, louder than anything they had ever heard. The ground cracked beneath their feet, and the shadows deepened into a suffocating darkness. Kobe screamed, "I told you not to touch it. We have to leave." But the forest had awakened, its wrath descending upon them. The men scrambled to escape, but the whispers grew into a deafening roar, the faces on the tree now fully alive, their expressions twisted with rage. The forest had judged them, and it would not let them go unpunished. The golden relics shimmered faintly in the dim chamber as Adisa and Dumi held them in trembling hands. Kobe stood frozen at the edge, his face pale with fear. Suddenly, the chamber began to shudder violently. Dust rained down from the cracks in the ceiling, and the air grew thick with a suffocating presence. From the darkness beyond, shadows began to coalesce, swirling together like a storm. The golden light from the relics dimmed as figures emerged, their forms shifting between the familiar and the monstrous. At one moment they bore the faces of elders long past, etched with sorrow and disappointment. In the next, their forms grew monstrous, their features twisted with anger and fury. A voice, deep and resonant like the rumble of distant thunder, filled the chamber. "You have disturbed the balance," it intoned. "The forest remembers. The ancestors watch." Adisa clutched the relic tighter, his voice trembling as he tried to speak. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The figures turned toward him, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark. "We are the guardians of Nyama," they answered in unison. "Once, we walked among you, tending the soil, sharing the laughter of the village. But greed and betrayal poisoned the hearts of men, and the forest claimed us." Dumi stepped forward, his envy momentarily overtaken by fear. "We did not mean harm. We only sought to silence." The spirits roared, their voices reverberating through the chamber. "You sought riches, you sought glory, you sought to defy the wisdom of those who came before you. But you are no different from those who betrayed us." The air grew colder as the spirits continued, their sorrow turning to rage. "This forest was once our home, a sanctuary blessed by the ancestors, but men, blinded by greed, defiled it. Now, it is cursed. It binds us here, and it will bind you as well." Before the trio could respond, the chamber was consumed by darkness. One by one, they were separated, each plunged into their own vision, a nightmare crafted from their deepest fears. Adisa found himself standing in the heart of his village, but it was not as he knew it. The once thriving community was now in ruins. Smoke rose from burnt huts, and the ground was littered with broken tools and lifeless forms. He saw Zola kneeling in the ashes, her face streaked with tears. "This is what your defiance has wrought," a voice whispered in his ear. "You sought to prove yourself, but you have destroyed everything you hold dear." "No," Adisa cried, falling to his knees. "This isn't real. It can't be." Dumi stood alone in a barren wasteland, the sky above him gray and lifeless. The wind howled, carrying with it whispers of blame and rejection. He turned in every direction, but there was no one, only endless emptiness. "You wanted to be more," the voice taunted. "You wanted to rise above, and now you are alone. Your jealousy has consumed you, and it will leave you with nothing." Dumi's voice cracked as he shouted into the void, "Someone, please. Don't leave me here." Kobe's vision was quieter but no less harrowing. He stood in his family's hut, but it was eerily silent. He turned to see his mother and younger siblings, their faces pale and lifeless. A faint memory stirred within him of a day he had failed to act, a day when he could have protected them but didn't. "You carry the weight of failure," the voice said, soft yet cutting. "Your guilt will follow you, for you cannot escape the truth of who you are." Kobe fell to the ground, clutching his head as the memories replayed endlessly. "I tried. I did everything I could," he sobbed. The trio was abruptly pulled from their visions, their cries echoing in the chamber as the spirits reappeared. The room was now colder, darker, and alive with an unbearable tension. "You have seen your truths," the spirits said, their voices cold and unforgiving. "Greed, jealousy, arrogance, guilt, these disrupt the balance between the living and the ancestors. You have brought this upon yourselves." Adisa, trembling but defiant, stepped forward. "Please," he begged, his voice breaking. "Give us a chance to make this right." The spirits loomed closer, their forms growing darker. "If you fail, your names will be cursed, your lineage is broken. Balance must be restored, or you will be bound to this forest forever." The ground beneath them suddenly cracked, sending jagged fissures snaking across the chamber floor. The trees outside twisted grotesquely, their roots bursting through the earth like claws. The whispers of the forest grew into anguished wails, filling the air with an otherworldly torment. Kobe screamed, "We have to leave. We have to get out of here." Adisa tried to move, but his legs felt like lead. Dumi clung to one of the golden relics, his face twisted with fear and desperation. The chamber trembled violently as the spirit's final warning echoed. "You will pay the price of your arrogance unless you atone. The forest has awakened, and it will not rest until balance is restored." The trio stood frozen, terror gripping their hearts as the forest fury reached its crescendo, threatening to consume them entirely. The wind howled softly through the village, carrying with it an eerie unease. Zola sat by the hearth, her hands clutching the sacred family staff, its wood smooth from generations of use and rituals. Her heart was heavy with a sense of foreboding, an unshakable feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. She rose to her feet, her resolve hardening. "The ancestors guide me," she whispered, gripping the staff tightly. The symbols etched into its surface seemed to glow faintly under the firelight, a sign of the protection it carried. She knew what she had to do. The path to the forest was treacherous in the moonlight, its shadows stretching like grasping hands. As she approached the edge of Nyama, the air grew colder, denser, as though the forest itself were resisting her presence. The leaves rustled, though there was no wind, and whispers floated on the air, voices of the unseen, testing her resolve. Zola paused, breathing deeply. "I come not to defy," she said aloud, her voice steady, "but to seek mercy for my brother." The staff seemed to pulse in her hand, a reassurance that her faith would guide her. Step by step she entered the forest, the darkness pressing around her like a living thing. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, but she pressed on, her heart steady with ancestral strength. Deep within the forest, Adisa, Kobe, and Dumi cowered beneath the wrath of the spirits. The chamber quaked, the faces on the walls twisting with fury. Shadows swirled like a tempest, and the spirits' voices roared like thunder. "You have defiled the sacred ground," they bellowed. "The balance is broken. You will pay the price of your arrogance." Adisa shielded his face from the blinding light that radiated from the relics. "We meant no harm," he shouted, his voice desperate. "Please spare us." The spirit's laughter was cold, mocking. "Harm has been done. The forest remembers all." A sudden light broke through the swirling chaos, cutting through the darkness like the first ray of dawn. Zola stepped into the chamber, the sacred staff glowing with an otherworldly brilliance. The spirits recoiled momentarily, their forms flickering as the light washed over them. "Enough." Zola's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "I come not as a defiler but as one who seeks forgiveness. These men are my kin, and their actions, though foolish, were not born of malice." The spirits loomed closer, their fury still palpable. "Why should we forgive those who have disrespected the sacred?" Zola stepped forward, her head bowed. "Because to punish without mercy is to deny the lessons they must learn. Let their mistakes serve as a warning to others. Condemnation will only breed fear, but forgiveness can teach wisdom." Zola knelt before the spirits, her staff planted firmly in the ground. "If a price must be paid, let it be mine," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Take me as your servant, bind me to this forest if that is what you demand. But let them go, so they may carry your warning back to the village." Adisa cried out, his voice breaking. "Zola, no, this is my fault. I will stay. You don't need to." Zola turned to him, her eyes soft yet firm. "You are my brother, Adisa. I will not let you carry this alone. This is my choice." The spirits fell silent, their forms shifting as though uncertain. The chamber stilled, the swirling shadows slowing to a gentle pulse. The lead spirit stepped forward, its face a blend of sorrow and wisdom. "Your courage and humility move us," it said. "You offer yourself willingly, not out of fear but love. Such acts are rare in the living." The spirits turned their glowing eyes toward Adisa, Kobe, and Dumi. "We will spare them, but only on one condition. Your village must honor the ancestors. Let the stories of this night be told, so that none may repeat the mistakes of the past." Zola bowed her head. "It will be done." The chamber grew brighter, the oppressive darkness lifting. The spirits began to fade, their voices now calm. "Go and remember, balance must always be kept." The ground beneath them steadied, and the light of the chamber softened into a warm glow. Adisa helped Zola to her feet, his hands shaking. "You saved us," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Zola smiled faintly, her strength waning. "The ancestors guide us all, Adisa. Remember this moment, and never forget what we owe them." As the group emerged from the forest, the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. They carried with them the lesson of Nyama, a lesson that would echo through generations, preserving the balance between the living and the spirits. The spirits stood tall and unyielding, their forms shifting between ancestral figures and otherworldly guardians. The glow of Zola's sacred staff flickered faintly as the silence deepened, heavy and expectant. Then, the lead spirit stepped forward, its face a blend of sorrow and wisdom. "Your courage, child of the living, is rare," it said, its voice resonating like a deep drumbeat. "Few offer themselves willingly for the sake of others. Your humility and love have softened our wrath." The spirits turned their glowing eyes to Adisa, Kobe, and Dumi, their gazes piercing. "But know this, your greed and arrogance have dishonored the sacred bond between the living and the ancestors. The balance that holds this world together is fragile, and you have threatened it." Adisa bowed his head, shame coursing through him. Kobe and Dumi stood frozen, their faces pale, their breaths shallow. The spirits' forms grew brighter, illuminating the dark chamber. "The forest will remember this day," they continued, their voices a collective echo. "But the forest cannot exist in isolation. The living must honor the past and walk in harmony with it." The symbols on the walls of the chamber shimmered faintly, the faces in the carvings appearing softer, less twisted with anger. The lead spirit spoke again, this time with a hint of sorrow. "The ancestors do not seek vengeance but balance. Let this be a lesson carved in shadows." They pointed to the trio. "The forest's sanctity must be preserved. Return to your village and tell them of this day. Let them honor their ancestors through rituals and storytelling, so that the mistakes of the past are not repeated." Zola nodded, her voice calm but firm. "It will be done. The stories will be told, and the rituals will live on." The spirit's gaze turned to Adisa, their forms towering over him. "Adisa, you defied wisdom and brought danger upon yourself and those you hold dear. But the ancestors are merciful. They grant you a chance to redeem yourself." Adisa, humbled and trembling, knelt before them. "I see now the error of my ways," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was blinded by pride and the need to prove myself. I will honor you, ancestors. I will honor the forest." He turned to Kobe and Dumi, his voice breaking. "I led you into this, and I failed you as a friend. I let my arrogance guide me. Forgive me." Kobe stepped forward, placing a hand on Adisa's shoulder. "We were all at fault. You're our friend, Adisa. We'll face this together." Dumi, his envy now replaced by guilt, nodded. "We forgive you. Let's make sure we never forget what we've seen." Adisa rose to his feet, his voice steadier now. "I vow to uphold the traditions I once mocked. I will tell this story to ensure no one else makes the same mistakes." The spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into a warm glow. "Go," they said, their voices softer now. "And remember, the balance must never be broken again." As the forest quieted, Adisa, Zola, Kobe, and Dumi emerged from the dense trees. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. They carried nothing but a single relic, blessed by the spirits, leaving behind the golden treasures that had tempted them. The village came into view, its huts and pathways bathed in the morning light. Adisa stopped at the edge of the village square, turning to Zola. "Thank you for saving us," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Zola smiled faintly. "The ancestors guide us all. Now let us guide the village." As the group entered the square, villagers gathered around them, their faces a mixture of relief and curiosity. Adisa raised the relic high, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "Hear me, people of Nikara. The forest has spoken." He recounted their journey, their greed, the wrath of the spirits, and the lesson they had learned. The villagers listened in rapt silence, their fear of the forest now mingled with respect. "The ancestors do not seek to harm us," Adisa concluded, "but to teach us. We must honor them, not with fear but with reverence." Chief Ning stepped forward, his expression grave yet thoughtful. "You have returned with a story that will shape our future. Let us ensure this lesson is never forgotten." With solemnity, the chief led the villagers in a ritual to honor the ancestors. Incense filled the air, and the villagers chanted ancient hymns, their voices rising in harmony. Together they pledged to preserve the legacy of the forest, vowing to uphold the balance between the living and the spirits. In the days that followed, Adisa took on a new role. Seated beneath the great baobab tree in the village square, he became the keeper of stories. Children and elders alike gathered to hear his tale, their faces lit with wonder and awe. "The forest is no longer a place of fear," Adisa said, his voice steady. "It is a place of wisdom, a reminder of who we are and the balance we must protect. Over time, the Nyama forest transformed in the minds of the villagers. No longer a forbidden place, it became a symbol of ancestral power and wisdom. Rituals and stories kept its memory alive, ensuring that the lessons of the past would guide future generations. And so, the story of Adisa and the Forbidden Forest was woven into the fabric of Nara, a timeless parable of ambition tempered by humility, courage guided by wisdom, and the enduring power of tradition.